Welcome back. Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. The Democrats are obsessed with three things, it seems to me: immigration, race, and the environment. How are they doing on any of these? Because of ideological protocols outweighing migration protection protocols, the president has created a crisis and an emergency and a human rights disaster at our border. Also, a drug and potential national security catastrophe. On race, we've never been more divided, segregated, race-conscious. Even acts of insane, non-politically motivated violence has to be attached to race, even when it's wrong and simply not there. I give you the Atlanta spa shootings, and perhaps the Boulder shopping center shootings as well. Nearly every liberal-leaning commentator and political leader rushed so quickly to make them about race when they were not, or to look as if the shootings came from the right when they did not, that they should be ashamed. But there can be no shame for those who are shameless. For when you are in the exploitation business, it's important to remember what the word exploit means: to further, to advance. And in the cases of race or immigration, that is what the liberal left does, always advancing, always furthering, in light of evidence or in the absence of it. It doesn't matter. It's the advancing of the cause that matters, the furthering of a narrative. What it appears we actually have in Atlanta and Boulder is severe mental illness and possibly jihadism. Now, what throughout the COVID pandemic was the last thing the liberal left cared about when it came to mitigation strategies? Mental health. We warned and warned that quarantining the healthy, dramatically disrupting our children's and educational and social lives, and putting people out of work and in isolation would have consequences far worse and more dangerous, if not as consequential and dangerous, as the virus itself. Now we see pediatric emergency admissions for mental problems last year were up nearly a third. Suicides went up. Drug use and alcohol abuse went up. We have a disease or virus that eats lungs. So the liberal left was busy pushing the legalization of marijuana that, when smoked, can be as damaging to the lungs as cigarettes, and is a drug that dramatically affects the brain. Again, mental issues seem to be far off the map of concerns for the liberal left, and I've never understood it, but don't tell me they're pro-science and pro-medicine and that we are not. They're pro-racialization, that's what they are, and pro-destruction. They think it's creative destruction. But with a country that does not need to be destroyed and is the best regime the world has known, there can be no such thing as creative destruction, only ideological destruction. Starting not with the concern for our mental health as a country, but about propagandizing brains. Remember that word exploit, to further, to advance. There's not a better way than to start young and continue relentlessly and unremittingly if you're the left and you're in the exploitation business. About a month or so ago, I was warning about the effort to convert toddlers into racists. Now the Washington Post is finally discovering it. This week, they wrote an article titled "Social Justice for Toddlers. These new books and programs start the conversation early." The Washington Post author wrote, quote, "Experts say it's never too early, and a new wave of tools and resources can help start the race conversation," close quote. As Matt Philbin put it, and what tools they have: anti-racism flashcards, intersectionality books, a music class that develops understanding of gender and personhood. Wouldn't you like to tuck in the little one with a soothing reading of Anti-Racist Baby or Woke Baby? Best of all, the Washington Post report says, quote, "A drag queen story time will soon be a television show." And those experts urging you to politicize your infant? The Washington Post talks to a woman who sells, quote, "a curated box of toys, books, and curricula that aim to dismantle bias for kids as young as 2 years old." Take that, genderless potato head. Philbin continued. She consults others who say that, quote, children develop implicit bias as early as 3 months old, and at 4 years old are categorizing and developing stereotypes, close quote. Indeed, the Post article touted musical classes, flashcards, and a variety of books that, quote, discuss intersectionality and broaden representation, along with, quote, short videos that teach parents and toddlers about anti-racism ideas, close quote. The feature also included feedback from a Canadian woman who founded a company that aims to stomp out bias amongst toddlers, psychology professors who study race and social interaction, and the owner of a children's bookstore that aligns with her mission of promoting Black women authors, women's activism, and women artists. The Washington Post also spoke with performance artists with a goal to increase exposure to drag, support gender-variant children, and create an inclusive space where everybody feels welcome, and a variety of other experts on the subject as well. Teaching kids to be neo-racists. Note how the assumption in the story that this is a self-evident good, not a single source suggesting this point of view has its critics, wrote Andrew Sullivan. Not a one. This is propaganda. When homeschooling demands explode, as I presume they soon will, old school liberals may begin to understand why. What I'm describing above is not just propaganda. When it's used on toddlers and vulnerable parents, it's mental abuse. It's child exploitation. There's that word again. Exploitation. It can mean achieve as much as it can mean advance or furtherance. And again, it's in the service of achieving a political end. Using children that way is a reproof to me. Netflix is just now working on a special aimed at toddlers in preschool, produced by the radical racialist Ibram Kendi. In Kendi's book version, Anti-Racist Baby, which they are putting into film, toddlers are encouraged to, among other things, shout, quote, there's nothing wrong with the people. Celebrate our differences. Knock down the stock of cultural blocks. Confess when being racist. Grow to be an anti-racist. Believe we shall overcome racism. Close quote. Toddlers. 3 and 4-year-olds. Now, the first thing that comes to mind is, why would a child need to be taught anti-racism in the first place? Aren't children naturally born thinking in terms of race? Or rather, are efforts like this geared toward getting them to think in terms of race? If anyone needs help here, the answer is the second one. Children are, in point of fact, not born thinking people of color are better or worse than other people of color. As Rogers and Hammerstein instructed many years ago, you've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. You have to be taught to hate. As someone put it earlier today, the one thing adults can actually learn from children is purity of heart and soul and lack of racial guile. So what are we doing to our children? From toddlers to teens. From toddlers being instructed in complex race theory to Teen Vogue promoting the virtues of communism to the Cartoon Network promoting the virtues of transgenderism. Plato in The Republic put it this way, quote, shall we just carelessly allow children to hear any casual tales which may be devised by casual persons, and to receive into their minds ideas for the most part the very opposite of those which we should wish them to have when they are grown up? We cannot, and therefore it is most important that the tales which the young first hear should be models of virtuous thought. Then will our youth dwell in a land of health, amid fair sights and sounds, and receive the good in everything, and beauty, the effluence of fair works, shall flow into the eye and ear like a health-giving breeze from a purer region, and indelibly draw the soul from the earliest years into likeness and sympathy with beauty and reason. There is no nobler training than that, close quote, said Plato. Now, when you're thinking about noble training, I think it's worth pointing out that we actually need to be taught that ourselves. I think I know why we need to be instructed in this, and it goes back to a quote by Roger Scruton. All the best things we have when abused, will cause bad things to happen. You can plant into a child good as much as you can plant bad. You can implant the beauty of reason, and you can implant the ugliness of bad passion. When Allen Ginsberg visited Norman Podhoretz, trying to convert him to his leftist countercultural point of view, and Norman was having none of it, Allen left him saying, "We'll get you through your children." Somehow I think the left understands all this better than we do. Leo Strauss wrote that liberal education is liberation from vulgarity. And he said the Greeks had a beautiful word for vulgarity. They called it aperikolia, lack of experience in things beautiful. Liberal education supplies us with experience in things beautiful, or it used to, once upon a time. Is that what we're doing now? Or are we training in the experience of things ugly? Are we treating and teaching our children well, or are we exploiting children and destroying not just their brains, but their souls? Destroying things and people beautiful. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.